Hyperfocus on Fleetwood Mac, my roommate's dead, fungus fermentation, another Wonka reboot, JFK's assassination.
It's not my favorite topic, just my brain's current fixation.
Hyperfocus.
Hyperfocus, a neurodivergent podcast.
Hi, everybody, and welcome to Hyperfocus, a neurodivergent podcast. I am your host, Virginia Dickens, and I am here today with New York City-based comedian Blair Dawson. Hi, Blair.
Hello to the camera. Hello to the listener.
Thank you so much for joining me this evening. I appreciate it.
Excited to be here.
In a little bit, we're going to get into your hyperfixation on astrology, which is like one of my favorite things ever to talk about. And then after that, my hyperfixation on the side effects of Zoloft. But before we get into that, I like to just start off the podcast by letting you share a little bit about your experience being neurodivergent.
Well, I feel like I don't know the full circle of neurodivergence, but I know that it does include being ADHD,
Yes.
which I definitely am, although I do feel like I'm constantly getting gaslit into thinking I'm not.
Mm-hmm.
I have a brother that is super ADHD, and it was very much like recognized in the classroom growing up, like immediately. And like on my report cards, it was definitely like, oh, it has trouble focusing, but no one would be like, oh, she has ADHD. But then in high school, I just struggled so much that that I was like, if I'm gonna have any chance in getting into college, like I need to go on medication. And my mom finally agreed to let me go on medication. She did also add a caveat, like, I'm not gonna allow you to be on medication unless you're also in therapy. So that was also great.
Yeah.
So I started going on medication for ADHD in high school, and then I was on it for the first 2 years of college, but it made me so incredibly anxious that I was like, I will figure out a way to do it without this. And so without telling anyone, I stopped taking it.
Okay.
But then the rest of college was like, I didn't do anything other than school. I was like, I'm going to master school, in a hyper-focused way.
Yes, so this is the thing.
Yeah, but I also went to art school, which I think it's a lot easier to lock in when it's like, your choice, something you're interested in.
Yeah, and like what kind of art? I almost went to art school.
I went to art school for production design.
Cool.
But I would say my experience largely has been kind of like obsessions and holes. But the flip side of that is that it makes everything more challenging, just like daily tasks. Like, I remember one time I had a meltdown in college because I was like, I left my wallet inside my dorm. Let me go back in. And you have to go through security and all this stuff. And it takes a long time. And then I go back out. I forgot my wallet again. I went back in. What am I doing? I go back outside. I forgot my wallet.
Yeah.
But I do have like doing stand-up, a lot of people doing stand-up have ADHD, and then other people who have ADHD just don't perceive me as someone with ADHD.
I've been told that people have said that to me as well, because I seem organized.
Yeah.
And I think it's because I'm Virgo rising, which we'll get into later.
But you're most likely Leo rising.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Okay, because I don't care for Leos, but
Well, your rising sign isn't based on your personality anyways. It's just like how you physically present and your physical health.
I can't wait to talk about astrology with you. Well, one, you like know a lot about it, which is great. And like that the West, we're using the wrong astrology chart, essentially, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Should I just start from the beginning?
Start from the beginning. Yeah. Of course. Yes.
Okay, because it does like require a lot of context to explain. So like starting literally from the beginning, like ancient Egyptians and Babylonians, they invented astrology. And then it was brought over to the East and the West by Alexander the Great. And then it remained intact in the East and like had been adapted into like Vedic astrology in India, and they're using the correct ayanamsha, which is like the correct time frame. However, in the West, astrological priests and Catholic priests were vying over political power, so a lot of political leaders were going to astrological priests for counsel as opposed to Catholic priests. And the Catholic priests did not like that. So they used Ptolemy, who's a famous astronomer, which, by the way, astronomers and astrologers were one and the same until the Enlightenment. So any astronomer could draw up like a natal chart up until the Enlightenment, in which they separated the two. But so Ptolemy was a famous astrologer, and they used him kind of as a political pawn to turn against the community, and helped create these like anti-divination laws in which studying astrology was illegal. Studying the stars in the sky was illegal. Like, if you remember in history, like Copernicus, all these scientists were getting threatened because, like, oh, well, the Earth revolves around the sun and not vice versa. So it's like they legally weren't permitted to study the stars in the sky. So they made it illegal, but then they created this like fake version that's based on the agricultural calendar. And when it was made illegal, it just so happened to line up with the tropical zodiac. And so we are using the tropical calendar, the tropical zodiac in the West. So that is based on the agricultural calendar, what we use for farming, and not the constellations as they appear in the sky the moment we're born, which is what a natal chart is. A natal chart, for those familiar with astrology, is that big circle with all the different planets in it that tells you all of your signs and your placements. So a natal chart is a snapshot of where the planets are in the stars the moment you're born. And it's like meant to be a bit of a blueprint, and it is based on like degrees and like location. And so the system that we were raised on doesn't evolve over time. It doesn't take into the precession of the equinoxes and like the wobble in the Earth's axis, which would cause a sign to shift by a degree every 72 years. For example, I am born on December 17th, and so that kind of would make me Sagittarius, Capricorn, cusper towards the end of that constellation. However, in the correct time frame, that would kick my sun sign back 23 degrees. So I'm still technically a Sagittarius, but most people, their placements are moved one sign back.
Okay.
So in order for people to look up their correct signage within the Greco-Roman format of astrology, there are many different formats of astrology. Like Vedic uses Hindu gods and Hindu mysticism and mythology, but sidereal, spelled like sidereal, you can look up like true sidereal astrology. And then put in your information, use equal houses, and then you'll see your chart based on the actual sky. I know it's such like an info dump, but also like
this is like so interesting because it is like I'll plug in my info to different places, and like, you know, and then it'll be different which like wherever I plug my info into, and then it's overwhelming.
Well, here's the thing. It's a multi-billion-dollar industry, which is like
astrology in general.
Yeah. And I think it's my hesitation to even admit my interest, because I think it has all these connotations, which I in part agree with, where it's like, well, Western astrology is designed, like a horoscope is written so that everybody can relate to it, where it's so general. Like Linda Goodman's sun signs, like all these like publishers know that they're publishing the inaccurate system. However, it's much more simple and easier to understand than the real thing. Right. And it's like fixed, you know, so it doesn't evolve over time, which makes it a lot easier. And it makes it a lot easier to sell books.
And I feel like it falls into tropes then. Also, then it makes it more, I don't want to say like stereotypical. I guess are the characteristics of the signs like the similar, or because it's like evolving, they change a bit?
What's available to the public is the 12 signs. I know in India, like, oh, if you're a master astrologer, you know the 27 signs.
Wow.
So there are 27 signs in the zodiac. And also, like, if you're thinking, like, well, I was born on this day, and I know this other person who's born the same day, like in the same hospital, whatever, we're nothing alike. Well, it's just like, well, what time of day? Because the degree of your rising sign determines the rulership of each of your houses, and your houses are basically like subject departments. Like the first house is your physical body, self, ego. The second house is how you like money. The third is like communications, art, siblings. The fourth is like home, property. The fifth is like passions, romance, children. The sixth is like practical things, service, routine things we don't want to do this lifetime in order to provide. The seventh is marriage, partnerships. The 8th is kind of like all the taboos in life, transformations, death, rebirth. The 9th house is about higher knowledge, religion, philosophy. The 10th is career, but like on a soul level, like what your legacy is, like what you give to the earth, essentially. The 11th is social networks, friendships, status. The 12th is debts, loss, medicine, being isolated.
I was always under the impression the 12th house was like the wild card house.
Each house is kind of like ruled by a sign. So like the 8th house is Scorpio and the 12th is Pisces. So think of the characteristics of Pisces, and it is kind of emblematic of the 12th house. But it's like the system that I'm learning called Asterian, which is kind of an adaptation of ancient Egyptian astrology reformatted into a Greco-Roman format.
Okay.
And you do this thing called the animal totem, in which you determine the ruling planet for each of the houses. I feel like I'm speaking gibberish to people.
No, this is perfect. Over.
Yeah. So the houses are like in a pattern where it's kind of like you have your good karma houses. That's like 1, 5, 9. Anything that touches those houses, like planet-wise, will be auspicious. It's like the good karma you've accrued in previous lifetimes. So those houses have a ruling planet. So for example, mine is Mercury, which is the planet of communication, wit, intellect. And then you have your career houses, so 2nd, 6th, 10th. And for me, that is ruled by Venus, the planet of like beauty, creativity in a generative sense. And then you have your 3rd, 7th, and 11th, the houses of desire. And mine are ruled by the moon, which is like the planet of like emotions, nurturance, mother, like things of that subject matter, personality. Then my growing houses, which are your houses of desire, and your career houses are neutral. Your like good karma houses, obviously, that's like more auspicious, lucky. And then your 4th, 8th, and 12th, those are your growing houses. They're basically the challenges you'll have in this lifetime, which everybody has. And it's kind of like what you're here to overcome. It's the karma that you need to clear out in order to achieve enlightenment and self-actualization and liberation, soul liberation. And that one for me is ruled by Rahu, which is like the Hindu term for North Node. The North Node is about like mental obsession, our id, phobias. So like my spiritual path is, according to this system, is overcoming fear and negative thinking. And that, I mean, that's definitely true for me. And the way you find out your rulership is through the degree of your rising sign, which is why it's so important to have the exact time of birth, and why, like, oh, you're born on the same day as someone, why you might theoretically, like, if you believe in this system, why you're different.
It's, oh no, the rising sign is like the most important thing. And it's like the hardest to get if you're trying to like find someone else's sign, or even your own. Because like I have my chart, but now I'm like, I don't know if it's like the accurate one, but Mercury is supposed to be the ruler of my chart. And then I have like a lot of Sagittarius placements in the 4th house. I think I have 3 things in Capricorn in my 5th house. But now I'm like, am I looking at the right one?
Well, it would still remain in the same houses. However, it would shift back a sign. And when you have multiple planets in one sign, it's typically a stellium. The famous example that I think a lot of people use is Taylor Swift.
Because she's a Sagittarius.
People are always like, oh, she's a Sagittarius stellium. And it's, no, she's not. She's a Scorpio stellium with like a Sagittarius rising or something.
Okay.
Because people are like, oh, she's Capricorn rising and Sag stellium. And it's like, no, it's actually kicked back.
Kicked back? Oh my God. So wait, because
I'm Scorpio stellium, which would make sense, wouldn't it? Because Scorpio is very inward and reflective, and it's like intense.
Wait, okay, but here's the thing, because my birthday is December 7th, and so I, based on like the Western charts, was like sun and moon Sag. So if I go back, I'm Scorpio.
You would be most likely Scorpio.
Oh, see, I don't like that.
But there are multiple types of Scorpio. I was born on an eclipse, or like the week of an eclipse. So my North Node is right next to my sun placement, and that is in this type of Scorpio called Parka. So that kind of like impacts my sun sign a lot, as well as like I have my Mercury in this type of Scorpio called Urania, and that's like my ruling sign, I suppose you would say. But yeah, there are basically 3 of each of the, I guess, the Greco-Roman system. Of the 12, like, Sagittarius, Capricorn, Aquarius, Pisces, Aries, Taurus, etc. I still use that as like a secondary system. So I look at like the more specific system, and then I go outwards for more kind of like nuances in someone's chart.
So you start with the 27 one and then
look outward, because it's like the natal chart that I have, it does show the 27, which I am looking at it in Hindu because the actual version that I'm studying, the software is too expensive. So I'm using like a free janky version, which like it is in Hindu and I just translate it.
And is it 27 houses or 27?
27 constellations. So 27 signs, and then the planets are within those stars, those signs.
So what are like the extra signs?
Well, I would then have to teach them, essentially. Yeah. There are 3 of each, and a lot of them are kind of like cusp signs of are like a combination of like, let's say like Sagittarius and Capricorn.
It makes sense that there's more because there's so many people who are also different. And so you're like studying to be an astrologer.
Yes.
Okay.
So actually when I did your show, I did do like a PowerPoint on a breakup that I had gone through, and the astrologer that I'm now studying with did predict it. And he didn't use specific words because like as mystics or whatever, you're not really supposed to explicitly say things that are going to happen that are like that would elicit fear, because fear, I guess like in a woo-woo sense, like is argued to like be like a block. So I hate using woo-woo language, but like spiritually advancing.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. Because like in a way, at least for me personally, I've had to kind of like take a step back from astrology, because when I start to use it for just trying to figure out what's going to happen in the future, I find that ultimately becomes like detrimental to me because I'm
manifesting anxiety.
Yeah, exactly. And it's most useful for me if like I'm going through something or whatever, and I use it to like reflect on either what's happening currently or like in my past. But then once I start looking forward too much, it's like it's not productive for me personally.
Yeah. Well, this person that I got the reading from, he was like, I really like the cycle you're going into. He essentially is like, what you're going to be going through is like this other process of the snake shedding the skin. The only thing I don't really like about this upcoming cycle for you is you might have to lose a connection, and you're going to come out on the other side like being surrounded by a whole new group of people. And like a year later, that was most certainly true. And that year I experienced like my life turning completely upside down in a way that I've never experienced. And now I've learned, now that I've been studying with him, that I was going through the 2 new dasha cycles, which is like again, it would take me really long to explain, but these 2 new time frames, and each dasha represents like a life cycle that you've like previously had. And so it's like entering a new life, and I was entering 2 and like coming out of which like this astrologer explained like, oh, it's like taking like a punch to the face. Like I just had to like reconfigure and like reset. And I was always kind of like privately reading about astrology just because I grew up like so atheist in a very like intellectual secular household. Yeah, like a skeptics.
Sure,
or like I myself, it may not sound like it, but I am a very skeptical person. And so I don't really like to share things with people that I can't prove. So I was always doing it privately. And then I got to a point where I was just like, you know what? I just need to follow where the energy is, and I'm interested in this, and I should like, pursue that. Yeah. And so I looked at this guy's website because I kept thinking about him and the astrologer, and I looked to see if he teaches, and he did, but like for $500 a session, and I like couldn't afford that. And I was with my friend, and she was just like, what if you ask if he does sliding scale? And so I did, and he was like, oh, can you do like 100 a session? And which was like a pretty steep decline because
that's a nice slide.
Yeah. And then when we met for our first session, he was like, well, I looked at your chart and you have the chart of an astrologer. So that's why I wanted to teach you astrology. And I think you're going to be really good at this. And now he doesn't even charge me.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah, because I was like, is this guy like a con artist? Is this guy?
Yeah.
Because
in that world of, you have to be careful. Yeah. Because there are, but like with anything, I guess,
right.
Would you like take on your own clients?
Yeah.
Is that the plan? Yeah.
Right now I'm doing like pay what you want with people.
Oh my God.
Although I will say I did do a friend recently, and this person makes a good amount of money. It's so funny because in their chart it did say money is going to be a block for them, like materialism. And they were the one who like paid me the worst out of anyone for like pay what you want.
Right. Yeah. That's funny.
And it was just like, it was like in the chart.
Did you tell them that?
No. Absolutely not.
Okay, I will be reaching out to you. And my hyperfocus as of like the past week has been like Zoloft side effects. You mentioned anxiety, and I have it too. Because I used to like not have anxiety that badly. It was like always depression. Well, honestly, getting treated for ADHD like really helped with the depression. But I feel like that's allowed like anxiety to flourish in a way. So my doctor just like really wanted me to try Zoloft, which I don't know. I've like just been on like so many SSRIs that like just don't really do it for me.
I was prescribed Lexapro once and I couldn't come, and I was like, I'm out.
That's literally every person on Lexapro. I was on Lexapro for a really long time, but I don't know if it actually like helped me that much. Maybe it made it slightly better. I don't know. But then by the end of Lexapro, when I was weaning off, I accidentally, I think like messed it up and took way more than I was supposed to and was like fine. So I'm like, well, was this doing anything to me at all? Like SSRIs are just such a drag because you have to like try it for a month and then like meet with your doctor and then like adjust the dosage and then wait another month, and like it just takes time. And I thought it was that life was behind me, but he prescribed me that, and then also like Klonopin for like if I have like really bad anxiety.
Yeah, I used to be prescribed Klonopin. I haven't, knock on wood, had a panic attack in a while.
I think I like went in with the mindset that the Zoloft like wouldn't do anything. Now I'm like coming up, I think, on 4 weeks. And then I started to like realize they were just things I was noticing about myself. And then they all just like turned out to be symptoms of Zoloft. I mean, the first one was just I was like so sleepy, and I'm already like a tired person, but I've been like waking up and being awake for like an hour and then like taking like a morning nap. And I've also been taking like evening naps at like 6:37 and like being like apathetic of I don't want to do anything, which I thought maybe it was just like the weather, the political climate. There's a lot of factors, but then I was like, okay, let me just go on Reddit. And people were just like, I just felt so lazy and like didn't want to like do anything, which I know is like a common thing with SSRIs to the point of it can kind of make you not feel. And I do have feelings. Like I cried the other day. I can't remember why. Like one of those you just like have a little cry. Like something just like sets something off. So like I have emotions still, but I just like haven't been in the mood to like do anything.
Right.
And then like a couple days later, and this is going to get like TMI, but I like had diarrhea for like a couple of days, which isn't normally like a big I just have a lot of digestion issues.
Right. IBS gang rise.
Exactly. So, you just kind of like deal with it. And then once it's like consistent enough, you're like, oh, what's going on? I thought I had a parasite again because I got this time last year, I got a parasite and that was a whole fucking thing. Diarrhea is like the top side effect of Zoloft, which I didn't know. It affects 20% of people. I wrote down some quotes. These are all from Reddit of people who take Zoloft. I shit like a portal to hell opened in my asshole for like 3 weeks, then back to normal. I'm on the toilet right now as we speak. I almost shit my pants while grocery shopping. I literally couldn't hold it in. That's how explosive the instant diarrhea can be when you are on it. First week on 25 milligrams and today started 50. Diarrhea was really pronounced LMAO.
I mean, at that point, solve the core wound.
I know. Right? I was like, is it worth it? Because like it's like making you question the difference between anxiety or like
you got to
chronic
change
diarrhea.
your life.
Yeah, you do. I'm not in this subreddit, but I'm like poking around and everyone's like, the catchphrase of this subreddit is never trust a fart. And I'm like, oh my God.
In my last relationship, the last 9 months of it, I like developed TMJ and like pretty bad IBS. I'm like, my digestion's horrible. And then the second we broke up, it went away.
Really?
Yeah. It's like a nervous system thing.
Yeah, it's so interesting. And then like somewhere in the subreddit too, they said that like serotonin gets processed through the gut. I don't know if that's true or not. But people were like, well, you know what they say, serotonin gets processed in the gut, so that makes sense. And I'm like, does this make sense? I thought it happened all in your brain.
I mean, I truly think it's psychosomatic.
Mm-hmm. So I just need to let go of whatever.
Well, I think you need to do some somatic work. Reset your nervous system.
Well, I feel like I dip in and out. Like, I'm like, I'll sign up for a meditation class, and then I like don't go back for a bit.
Do some like binaural beats.
I also like to go on long walks and listen to this meditation guy, Michael Singer.
Yes, I read The Untethered Soul. That really changed the way I think about a lot of things.
I'm working through it now. We'll touch on this when I schedule my session to go over my chart. And the final thing too was like, and this was also really annoying, that I also didn't even think was a side effect, was that I was like spotting all week, but I'm on birth control. And then I Googled it again, and Zoloft can cause irregular menstruation and spotting. And I'm like, are you fucking so I feel like within like
RFK
a week,
is right.
Yeah.
Let's ban SSRIs.
Send me to one of the wellness camps.
Yeah. Raw milk.
Thank you so much for joining me. This has been so fun. We will talk more off mic. Blair Dawson is a New York City-based comedian. You can follow her on all socials at Your Girl Blair. It's linked in the show notes. And also, you should definitely check out her comedy album, Now or Never, which is available on Spotify, Apple, and YouTube. You can follow Hyperfocus Comedy for updates on episodes and live shows. And there's also a Patreon linked in the show notes if you would like to support the show. I'm Virginia Dickens, and this has been Hyperfocus, a neurodivergent podcast.